So why me? Why not Ashisha can actually introduce herself, because it would be great to hear something from her, something about yourself.
Cool. Hi, and I'm very glad to be here. So, I had no idea yesterday. Rishikesh just pinged me out of the blue that why not have a little chat about life in general. And I'm like, very cool, because what else is Sunday all about? Otherwise, I'll just spend my time checking mails and stuff. Let me just give you a brief. I did my engineering from Jamia Millia Islamia. Then I worked for 2 years as a product developer in a software company called CSC. And then I proceeded to do my MBA in international trade from IIFT. That's Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, in New Delhi. So post that, my first company post MBA was Bharti Airtel, where I'm working currently as a zonal sales manager. So it's been kind of a roller coaster ride, but it's a ride which we see a lot of people take in any case. We know the engineering MBA combination is a little too common these days. So that was pretty much myself in a very short capsule. Of course, my hobbies, I'm a bit focused towards the creative side. So I have a blog and I do some random poetry as well. So that is what occupies my weekends or whenever I get an off time.
That is so nice, Ashisha. Like, so you do a lot of things, right? So this is something like really great. So we'll start with because a lot of our audience do want to know that but they mostly think sometimes is that life is always fair with people who are actually occupying good places in companies. But we really want to tell them that it's not like that. So it would be great to hear from you. If you could tell us something about your childhood, and maybe some of the incidences which actually motivated you, and which you actually remember from your childhood days, and they have still become kind of a lessons for you.
So, you're right. Whatever happens when you're a kid influences you a lot when you grow up because they form the base of what you become. So I remember there was one teacher, a computer science teacher, who used to teach us in class six, and there was nothing extremely extraordinary about him. But there was one thing he used to say to everybody. He used to say that whatever time you have right now, at this point of time, you will never get it again. So it's like, it's a very simple thing. People keep giving a lot of yarn in school. You find teachers, giving loads and loads of stuff. They talk about so many things. But I'm telling you, the one thing that he said was, at any point of time, you just determine what are you doing with your time. How much is that going to help you? Ask yourself those two, three questions, and you will get your answers. So, if what you are doing with your time is helping you probably in your career, or if it's helping you be happy, it's not that you've got to continuously working. So, if these two questions are not being answered, then probably you're not doing the right thing with your time. So I think that stuck with me. It was not a big deal, as I'm telling you. No extraordinary, nothing extraordinary about the teacher. He was a very cool guy. No pressure of studies or work. But this one thing that he told me stuck with me through thick and thin. And whatever I do, I just remember that it has to make me really happy, or it has to work towards what I really want to do. You know. So I think that was a very good learning that I received from that person.
So you really feel that it's not about the things that you are actually teaching inside the class, but it's about a number of other things which a teacher does to a student that actually matters right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. The subject itself, school really was not about the subjects that they taught the history, the geography, the civics, polity, etc., but more about the projects that you did alongside and the efforts that you put in there. So even in college, all those data structures and whatever mechanics, fluid mechanics. I don't think I remember any of that, but I especially remember the events which I organized and put up posters outside the college, got people to attend, stayed up all night in the college just to make sure that the fest proceedings are perfect. Worked on a website for very long. So these are the things which stay with you, which provide the basis of you know uh, your development as a human being, and that I think carves your path towards where you want to go, not whatever your credentials or whatever. I think your experiences really matter.
And how was your childhood? Actually, Ashisha, was it kind of a middle class kind of a thing, or you had got all the privileges in your life from the very beginning?
Oh, absolutely not. Does it? Do I look like? No, I don't look like a snob, do I? So no, I was born and brought up in Delhi, but so I went to this school in Delhi itself, Summerfields, and we were all piled in with the rest of the kids, and I would say that my focus had been on a lot of activities. I used to be involved in every other thing, everything that happened everywhere, like debating or uh, except studying, plays, writing, everything. So I would not leave anything to chance. Embroidery, even anything that happens in the school, I want to be in it. And no, my dad, is not a part of an MNC. My mom is a school teacher. So no, I come from very humble background. In fact, I belong to West Bengal, and you so no, if you're saying that we had any connections, zero, absolutely zero. So nothing like that. My dad is a self-made man. He started from scratch. He made his own company, did everything from scratch. So I don't believe that. I don't believe in that at all. And I believe that people who get things easily actually lose them pretty easily. You don't understand the value of things unless and until you really slog and earn them. So no, I wouldn't say that.
That is so motivating, Ashish, actually. Okay, so tell me, it's so interesting, to hear to all these things, because, most of us can actually relate to that as well, because most of us, do come from a very mediocre kind of a background, where even, our father and mother, sometimes we're not even knowing, like, what is MBA all about, right? So, tell us, one incident inside your childhood where you have, you think that you have failed miserably, but and then you took up that as a challenge, or maybe you actually did pretty well afterwards. Something, if you could remember, uh, just to remind our audience, like, failures are indeed, kind of, stepping stones to a bigger success.
I think I would say, I don't know if that falls in childhood, but does plus two count?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, absolutely.
the pressure about IIT and getting into IIT is like huge. You have to get into an IIT. That's so important. So I feel that that was one of the pressures. So most of the times, even the parents, just follow the herd. They just hear it from other people and just enroll you in those coaching centers and coaching classes. You go there, you try and understand. I would say that was the biggest failure. I could not understand a word. I wasted about, I don't know, a lakh or two there. That was hard-earned money of my parents, and I wasted a year sitting there in the classes, completely wasting my time, losing my confidence because I could not really understand what was being taught. Because see, a lot of the times the education system here focuses on a very chosen small batch of students. They don't
Hmm.
really understand. It's just like, if you're a fish, you can't expect to fly. It's as simple as that. So you cannot really expect that thing to happen. So yeah, I feel miserably in that case. My 11th scores dipped pathetically. My school teacher started wondering what's happened to her, whether she's something, when you reach a certain teenage, people start expecting something has happened. She does not want to study anymore. She's having those existential crisis or something. So that was a very bad phase, and I decided, I at that point of time I was like really worried. Should I really go for it, or should I leave it all? Should I take up some other subject altogether? Should I drop out? And then I was like, fine, I will take it slow. IIT is no longer my aim. So I took the exam, and of course, I didn't get through. And many people told me to drop a year, work towards it. I decided not to. Uh, I got into, I just, so on a whim, a friend of mine told me, why don't you fill up the Jamia form?
Hmm.
Why don't you fill
Hmm.
up this form? So I'm like, okay, fine. So I just filled up the form, and I attended the entrance examination. Somehow I got through, probably because the CBSE piece, I have no idea how I got through, because college was very tough. I can vouch for it. But yeah, I somehow got through, and the final interview was okay. He did not ask too many questions, random HR interview. So somehow I got through. I was in electrical engineering and then moved to computers. Even post that, my first job was not that amazing. It was in a product, it was a product developer role, but I did not get the best technologies to work with. I worked with a very obsolete technology. So I would say, starting from, so I used to be a good student in school, differently. So till 10th, everything was perfect. And then from 11, 12, so I would say, this engineering time, everything was, you know, a bit of a doldrums. So I was wondering what was happening to me, but I didn't lose hope. I kept trying. But this the best thing about this time when you fail is that you get a lot of time to introspect. You really start understanding what you want to put your time to, what do you really want, what's making you happier. So then I realized that, okay, I want to do something else altogether. Maybe software is not my thing at this point. Maybe I want to do something else. And I started preparing for CAT on the side while working itself. So I would say those 4 years, 4ish years gave me a lot of experience, uh, gave me a lot of, made me introspect and understand what I really wanted. And accordingly, I then applied for, I took CAT, and then I got into IFT, which is one of the top colleges in the country. From there, I even got the chance to move to Strasbourg, France, for about a 3 month term in Europe. So I think till from then, I don't know if I want to tell my current reportees that, look, this was who I was before. So yeah, I mean, it's a good journey, I would say. And it depends on you. It is totally up to you. You can either give it up, or you can either continue and rush and keep on, persist, and ensure that you reach where you initially wanted to reach, because sooner or later you'll get what you want. That is what I believe in.
That is so true. This is what we always, keep on discussing, and keep on telling to these guys. Like, if you've failed once, twice, keep on thinking about, something which you want to achieve in your life. Don't give up. Because failures usually don't tell that you don't deserve something. It actually tells us this is not the way to go. Right? Please change your ways. That is
Absolutely,
so nice,
absolutely.
actually, Ashisha. So, okay, Asisha. So you did your computer science engineering from Jamia. How was your experience there? Because Jamia is some college which is not that known, for for kind of a technical education or some perspective, as compared to what IITs and ITs and etc. are known for. How was your experience there at Jamia?
Good question. In fact, that's why I mentioned when my friend told me, and she was like, just apply. So I had only heard of the Jamia Masscom course, which is pretty famous because Shah Rukh Khan apparently did it, and Roshan Abbas and the other biggies graduated from there. So surprisingly, the BTech wing is a very illustrious wing, and the professors there actually come from, actually have taught in or have studied from the Illinois Institute, or some institute in the US. So I think I had no idea of it before, but it's a central university. So it is at par with, or perhaps a little over, IP, DTU, or DTU nahi, IP and IGIT. So it is at par like that. So I think the idea was good. Plus the cultural blend was very different. You find a lot of different people coming from different backgrounds. You learn a lot about them. So I think that groomed me for my later MBA experiences, or my later experiences in Europe as well. That also gave me a lot of matter to write, to be very frank, because I'm an avid writer, and I started blogging in 2014, and it actually came from there itself. and a couple of my articles got published in the Hindu as well. And it all started, the entire journey started from there, all the inspirations. So, the building, the beautiful lawns, and the teachers. So it's a different experience altogether. And I feel it's not like North Campus. There's not a lot of blitz or glamour. It's very, yeah, it's very simple, but it's a lot of fun. You get together with your friends, and during before Eid, you have these iftar parties where everybody pitches in, and you make sharbats in huge tumblers, ruafzas, and you make food. It was a lot of fun. So before all this fiasco that happened from all this thing happened this year, I think we used to have a lot of fun. And that was about how many years ago? I don't know, 4 years ago, I think. So it was a lot of fun at that point of time. So I had a very good experience at Jamia.
Yeah, and yeah, so all that fiasco which has happened, in the recent times, people have got some sort of a perception about Jamia, thanks to all the fake news which is being circulated about about the college, about the university as such. Because do you want to speak on that a little bit, or we should leave that question?
I
Maybe.
don't mind. I'm pretty okay with it. I feel
Yeah.
that mixing education with these points and these points of view is not good at all, and the education piece remains untainted. And I would say that for Jamia, I would say that for JNU, I have studied in IFT, which is about a few paces from JNU. So we used to go to the JNU canteen to eat, and I had friends from JNU. So we all should have. I personally believe so. No offense to any clan, anybody, anything. I just personally believe every college, every university should have a space to talk and to debate. That is what makes a college and a university a place to discover who you are. That's all I believe in. And thankfully, in my tenure as a student, in Jamia, in IIFT, I got all the space. And if you get that space, then I think we will not really have any issue. So it's unfortunate that the university has been put under such light, because before this, I've never had any issue, any problem. I mean, it was home for us. Jamia was home for us. It still is, I would say. So
And
yeah,
you're lucky, right? You
all,
got two paratha walas, one in front of Jamia and the other in front of IFT as well, because
you
both these
know
colleges
that
have great
parathe wala guy. He's very famous. I've heard Ranbir Kapoor used to have parathes there. It's called
yeah.
Lakshman. You'd be really
That's
glad
what,
he's
yes.
featured everywhere. So yeah, that's there.
Okay, so Ashisha, tell us, three things which you think were not taught at your graduation in school, which, if it would have been taught, would have been extremely helpful for you inside your corporate life and your personal life as well.
I
Or
think
three things, or you can even talk about four things. Sorry.
a lot of things, I would say, could have been taught, which were not taught. So first is people management. So this is something that nobody teaches you. I'll tell you, these are unwritten rules which don't actually exist, but they happen all the same. And you learn them on the way. You stumble and you learn them all the way. So when I got into this role of a zonal sales manager in Bharti Airtel, I first handled the Chandigarh area. That was last to last year for about 6 months, and it was a complete shocker to me, because suddenly the kind of perception you have when you've done sales and marketing and you're getting out, that probably you'll be working in a plush office, and you'll be working on how the brand would look like and what this would be, what that would be. And then you're suddenly put on the ground. You have to talk to the retailers, sell SIM cards, find out the primary, secondary, and suddenly you're brought to earth. That was the first difference, this reality check. So universities often, just skip over the reality part. They teach you a lot of theory, and there are barely any practicals. So that is one thing which I think every university should work on, giving enough practical experience to the students. you know, to be able to understand what they might face in real life, to have ample internships, ample projects, to ensure that they know what they're going to face. The second piece, which I would say, is, as I said in the beginning, people management. So when you enter the corporate world, you realize that you have to deal with a number of people who might not be like you, who might not like you, and who might not understand you. Everybody does not come from the same background. People may have different notions, different ideas, different aims, and you have to make them work to your towards your achievement, towards your goals, towards your KPIs, as they say, the key performance parameters. So you have to make that happen, and it's really a tough job. I think working is not really. It's not a difficult thing to work in a corporate sector, except when you have to deal with people. If you have more, so at the university level, I feel everybody should be involved in something, that involves a lot of people. Then you realize how many arguments there are, how many coordination issues there are, and how to get people on the same platform, on the same page, and get a project successfully accomplished. So this is very crucial, I feel, at every point. And of course, the final third would be the unwritten rules that nobody knows what they are. They say something and they mean something completely different. So I'll tell you something. I'll tell you a small incident. So I also did my sales internship in Chennai, and I had no idea of how to speak Tamil. So that was my first brush with sales about 2 years ago, and it was then that I came up with the concept of this, what exactly sales is all about, and I decided to pen it down. So this year itself, I received a contract from a publisher. I won't name the publisher, but they have offered me to, tell my experiences, sales manager experiences, to them. So that is something I'm working on. So probably I'll be able to give you more tips in my upcoming book, and then probably it will be more clearer to you. But at this point of time, I'll leave you with people management and unwritten rules. So please beware of unwritten rules, and definitely you'll be getting more when I talk about the book when it actually comes out.
Yeah. So people, do start following, Ashisha on Facebook. So I will be sharing her link, inside the description. And, wait for the book to come out and, buy it in bulk, right? Because,
Exactly. They can just pick up the tips from there, and at least not face all the problems that I have faced. I don't want anybody to go on the ground completely unprepared and face all those issues. So I just thought this is a must have for every person who's going to do sales, or who has ever done sales, or who will do sales, or whatever. So anybody, whoever wants, who's a newbie to sales, should, I feel, go for this book once and realize what this stupid girl did and how she suffered. So yeah, pretty much
uh,
that.
but Ashisha, I'm actually afraid about one thing. If a newbie, coming out of a B school, buys your book and reads it and go and implement, that's completely fine with me. But what usually happens is that, some people will buy that book, will make notes out of that, will become sales trainers without even doing sales.
Wow. I mean, that idea I did not even I anticipate. You are perfect. You're telling me the right thing. This is right in sales manuals, and yeah, this is what people would do. I could
Yeah.
become a sales trainer. That would be easier than facing targets all day. Answering targets, answering my manager, that becomes really difficult. I hope nobody
Yeah,
is
Ashisha,
watching. I just
Ashisha,
hope
I'm trying
nobody
to
is
bust
watching.
them actually. We should not become like them.
No, no, no. We won't. We won't. Good point. I'll take care of that. I'll put a disclaimer in the beginning.
Okay, Ashisha, so let us talk about your MBA journey. That after a lot of debacles, I would say, some sort of a failures, of not being able to meet the expectations of the society to crack IIT exam. You actually ended up cracking one of the best B schools in India, right? And it's a very renowned B school, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, and it's the dream college of most of the MBA aspirants, who actually prepare for CAT exam or IFT exam. How did you do that? What was your preparation strategy for all that?
Good question. So I was working at this firm, as I told you, and it was the second year of my working at that when I decided that I have to take CAT. So once I took CAT, once I filled the form, I began my preparation about in July, and the exam was in November. So to aspiring CAT, students, I would just say, do not do this. The sooner you start, the better it is. 1 year of preparation is good enough, but don't be scared even if you start as late as I have. Maybe start in July, even that's fine. As long as you know what exactly I'm going to cover. So, two basic things for preparation and two basic things I'll talk about generally about when you take the exam. So, first is when you start the preparation, you have to gauge which is your strong point and which is your weak point. So, in my case, I knew my strong point was verbal and logic to some extent. Quant was okay, and data was also just okay. So these were the two areas where I needed to work on, and the others I could do on my own. So I did join a course. I actually had taken some doubt clearing classes and a test series from Career Launcher. So for people who do self study, they can go for that as well. But I think a test series really helps because when you get that mock paper, when you sit in those conditions and attempt the questions, you realize what you actually come up with, the kind of answers you come up with, the kind of solutions you come up with in an atmosphere of pressure. So that will be important, I would say. At the same time, I feel it's very important when you take these exams, you go back and you dissect the answers. That is something which I find nobody does. I don't know, my friends or my peers, nobody did it, but I always attended the doubt classes where they would when they would discuss the paper, I would always go back and do all the 60, 70 odd questions which I got wrong or whatever. I did all the questions again. So that the next time I would never get those 60, 70 questions wrong. So that produces a confidence in you. It not only works, psychosomatically, but it also gives you an actual idea of what it should be like. So the next time your percentile automatically improves. But if you keep giving the mocks and you don't go back and work on your wrong points, then I think it's a disaster. So that is one thing which I'll tell every aspirant to follow. It's something which you cannot break. It's a rule which it's an unbreakable rule. You have to do this. Secondly, if you join regular classes or weekend classes, cool. Attend the classes if you want. If it works for you. So for some people, self study works. For some people, classes work. It's completely up to them. But be very sure of what topics you are doing. For example, if probability is not your stuff, leave it. You don't have to do probability. It's not a school exam. You have negative marking here. You'd rather leave the topics that you don't know and take the topics that you know. So I finished my entire syllabus of verbal ability in about 1.5 months because I knew that was my strong point, and I had kept July and August beginning. I would say July and August I had finished my verbal ability, the entire syllabus. Logical ability, I kept working on it throughout all these months. I did not really finish as such because you can't really finish. It's something you keep doing. And the third piece was quant. So quant, I chose the topics which I was good at. Geometry and numbers were my strong point, so I took them. Probability, I completely forgot. There was a probability question, I would not even touch it because there's no point doing something where you would get a negative mark for attempting it wrong. And this way, I don't remember all the topics, but this way I structured my paper. So for CAT, I think you just need a structure to work on. If you have your structure perfect, then I think you can scale it. I mean, you can ace it even within 3 to 4 months if your structure is ready. While attempting the paper, the most important thing to remember is do not answer any question you're not 100% confident of. If you think there's even a 1% or a 2% doubt that you have in that answer, then leave the question. So I made sure that even if I answered like how many 50 questions right, 50 questions or 40 questions, I made sure that those were absolutely correct. Even if I had a little bit of a doubt in any question, I just left those questions because most people lose more marks trying questions than they gained in positive marks. So I think this is probably what I follow. I follow very basic stuff, by the way. I'm a salesperson through and through. I follow real basic stuff. So
So these are the actually the the most important points that you are actually putting up, because you are absolutely right. If the basics are right, everything goes very well. But people usually forget their basics. They start
yeah,
focusing on a lot of other things.
because
Okay.
people make such a huge thing about hoopla about you have to win, you get this many percentile. It's fine. You don't have to. You can be average and it's okay. You will get into some college. There are so many people. So that's I think where we have to set our expectations correctly.
Okay, so I just like you have aced a number of job interviews as well. So any kind of particular set of suggestions you have, for people who are appearing for interview, and especially in these difficult circumstances, where the jobs have dried out for some time mostly. People who are appearing for the interviews, what if you would like to give some sort of a suggestions to them on the basis of your experience.
This is actually a very tough question because at this point, hiring has freezed. There's a hiring freeze in almost every company, and very few companies are actually putting out roles. And even if they are, those are like critical roles which require a lot of experience. So I would say again, very basic points. I only give basic points. That if you know what you really want, if you think personally that you're very good for the role, then you apply. And if that's the role that you want and you can really rub yourself hard for, sit for the role and make the interviewer realize how good you are. So, I also I take interviews for my FSCs, the field sales executives who come for my team. The only thing I check, I don't check where they are coming from, what background they are from. The only thing I check is the willingness and what do they think what value they'll give to me. These two are the things I check because nobody has so much time. Even when somebody is taking your interview, they do not have enough time or ample time to make out. Uh, understand a lot of things from what you try to say, so you have to give them pointers. For example, if I'm appearing for a sales manager interview, I'm going to give them my best achievements, my highest benchmarks, and my one key thing which I really excel at. So, and also, what does the recruiter want? At what point does he expect you to, excel? Say the recruiter wants the sales piece or the downloads to go from 40% to 60%. So you give them a pointer for that. You tell them that this is how we'll do that. So give them value and convince them how good you are. That's all. Do not confuse them with a lot of things because nobody has the time to unravel you. Remember, in that space of 15 minutes or I don't know, half an hour, 10 to 15 minutes are the most important time. Even when we sit for summer placements and we sat for the final placements, you realize that everybody is in a hurry and nobody has the kind of attention span. So within that time, you give them what they need. You give them the skill sets that you have, the achievements that you've made, and the value that you will be providing to their role. I think that's primarily what they look for. And even in this time, if you can give them these three basic things, you are home. You'll definitely get through.
So means that for deserving candidates, there's no dearth of job anywhere, anytime, anywhere, right? That is
Absolutely.
that is so true. Okay, so Ashisha, like from IT to sales, how has been the transition like? Because before MBA, you were working for an IT company, and then you transitioned to sales. Uh, did you find it very difficult?
I found it horrible. I found it so tough. I told you, I wrote a book about it because I found it so tough. But it was enlightening also because it was a very back end job that I was doing before. Before this, you go to the office, you write a code, you debug it, and you get home. There was no responsibility or accountability. Nobody is calling you up in the middle of a Sunday, for instance, to say that, ma'am, my account is not working. Ma'am, I'm not earning enough. You're not responsible for people earning. Suddenly, when you're a sales manager, you're responsible for how much a certain stakeholder in your area is earning. Suddenly, you feel so responsible that you're bound to work. It's not as simple. So, both of the roles have very different widths and breadths, depths and heights and whatever. So the dimension is completely different. And I feel in a sales role, I have many distributors or many partners who are working with me, and it is my responsibility to ensure that they earn out of it. Otherwise, there no longer will be a profitable partnership. So for me to work out the logistics, for me to ensure that my company also agrees with those rules, and yet I make a profit out of it, and I show the number growth, it's something, it is challenging. It is extremely challenging, especially in the context of the pandemic right now. So that becomes very important. So the key thing that changed for me between these two roles, between IT and sales, is the accountability. In a front end role like sales, you're accountable for what your team does. You're accountable for everything. Your team has made a mistake, you have made a mistake. Your team does well, you do well. So that's why I said, people skills is something which we don't teach in any university, which we don't talk about anywhere. And that becomes the most important, the most key point anywhere. In any organization you go, when you take up a front end role, this becomes more important. How your team perceives you, whether they enjoy working with you, whether they will. I know that if I call up my my TSMs, say on a Sunday, and say ki, get this done, yaar, I need this right now, they will do it. But you have to know how many times are you doing this. There are a lot of little things that have to be thought of. So yes, the accountability has gone up, and of course the responsibility, the number of days a week, the number of hours a day that you work, that has gone up. A lot of stress. I can't even imagine a lot of stress. I think it shows. Me giving an interview a while back, I would have, spruced myself up. you know, taken a lot of time to actually do it. At this point of time, I'd rather take a nap, get up, and normally do. So I've changed like this. I no longer care about those important things of life. So there you can see how I've changed, how the experience was.
Okay, so Ashisha, Sohail has, is, has asked a question like, he wants to know how do you find motivation and time amid your, already so busy schedule.
Hi, Suhail. That's a great question. Thank you. He knows because he sent me an escalation a while back, and I took about, I don't know, 2 3 days to reply. So I'll tell you why, how I manage time. I don't manage time well, but it's like, when you have an urge to write, you quickly note it down, whether it's on your phone, whether it's on your laptop, or because you have so many feelings and they need to be out. Suppose you have, something happened to you and you have to talk about it. You either call a friend or you write it down. So I do both. And when my friends are not available, I use the notepad or the Word doc. So that is usually what I do. And otherwise also I feel, so that's what I said, everything that I write has some resonance with what has happened to me or what I feel or what has happened to me before. So as I said, my the sales diaries book is also relating to my experiences as a sales manager, what I learned from there and what I understood from there. So it, yes, it is a lot about time management, but that is what we do day in and day out. I do that day in and day out. You take calls and you do a Zoom call. I'm on a Zoom call, and then I'm taking a customer call as well, and then I'm taking a TSM's call as well. So we learn to do that. I know it's really tough. I don't know how I do it. I don't know. It's kind of difficult. I don't know. I'm somehow managing it, and I'll keep doing it as long as I can. But yeah, I think it I owe a lot to my friends who understand the kind of cranky person I am, and who understand if I cut their calls in the middle, and who understand if I call them at 1 a.m. and tell them that ab bata, ab tell me what's happened. So I, thanks to my support system. So you need to have a strong support system for that. That's probably how I get through it. Family and
From
friends.
the Yeah, Ashisha, so from this support system, right, we do realize, what is the importance of mentorship and counseling, which is there in these days, especially, right? Once, talk about a kid who is just 19 years old or 18 years old who has just entered into an engineering college. He doesn't have people to talk to, somebody, because what we feel is that, and you actually substantiated it, that more lives are destroyed by expectation of getting into IITs as compared to anything else, especially for the 90s kids. So
I
for
completely
them,
agree.
for them, if they could talk to somebody like you, maybe, right, if they could talk to somebody like you, first thing is that finding someone like you is a very difficult task, right? Because you have to go on LinkedIn, you have to go on Facebook, you have to keep on finding people, and then you cannot find people, right? But if we could somehow connect these people to people like you, and if they could have an interaction with you for 15 minutes, they will come to know that whatever they are thinking, and whatever the negative thoughts which is there in their mind is of no use, right? So how important do you think is this concept of mentoring, mental health, and counseling, especially in a country like India, where students do suffer, a lot of suicides are happening, every day.
If I say that it's important, it would be an understatement because it's super important. It's super duper important because people don't understand that if you're not feeling well, it's not necessary that you're not well physically. It might also be that you're not well mentally. And I'm not taking names, but I personally know people who approach me and who come to me, friends, juniors, other people, out of the blue, and there have been suicides. I'm a personal connect, an acquaintance of mine, a junior of mine, actually committed suicide, and he was from a very prestigious college. It's in Delhi itself. It was a very prestigious college. We were shocked out of our wits. We were completely shocked out of our wits, and I mean, this is unacceptable. The fact that we place so little importance on mental health shows right now. It shows how the students at this point are dealing so badly with this. We definitely need a support system. It's the need of the hour. I think this should have happened a long time ago. We realize that in the schools in the US or in Europe, you do have school counselors. People take up these things seriously so that they do not fester and become reasons for higher problems later on in life, which are suppressed. These things are suppressed and they grow out wrongly. I think this is highly imperative. And this is a wonderful idea, by the way.
And Ashisha, so I'll just take a small time from you because I know that you are running out of your time. Is that there's a number of job search portals. I won't take the names of them, but there are a number of them. Which actually where the candidates actually pay money. They actually apply for jobs. But many a times they do not get the job because what I think is that and you can give your point of view as well, is that they're not guiding you towards a job. You're just playing games around because there's no counselor, there's no mentor, there's no person telling you how to write your CV, how to apply to a job, how to actually appear for an interview. You're just playing games around, so it's kind of a wastage of money, don't you think so?
I agree. I agree. Because you put your, it's like, in the writing world, you call that your manuscript is put in a slush pile. Nobody will pick it up. Nobody will ever see it. Similarly, your CV is there on the platform and you get these Naukri, I mean, you get these monster and all. They send you that this is the job, this is the job. You get no calls. Or if you do get the calls, they are not your type of jobs. So of course, the mapping of you with your apps, with your perfect job, with your perfect thing is not there, and that requires targeted work, as you said, somebody to mentor you, to help you write your CV, to understand exactly what role you want, how do you structure your CV separately to attempt to get that role. I think that's super important. I think you've made a very good point. It's very, very important, yes. And it's important not to, beat around the bush and just apply blindly everywhere.
Right. So it's good to invest, on something which can actually guide you path rather than, to invest your time and money on something which tells you that I will give you the destination, because they can never give you the destination.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think it's beneficial to invest in a good mentoring, service or whatever, where they actually are invested in your growth, and which they will keep seeing and keep telling you, guiding you at every point, telling you at which point you did it correctly or didn't do it correctly. I think this is very, very important, and it's very beneficial, especially in this context.
And they will
I
even pick up your call at 1 o'clock, if you don't get qualified for a job, telling that you are not worth, you are worth more than that. So this is
absolutely,
this is something which we need right now, Ashisha.
totally agree. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so I won't take much of your time because I had just got 40 minutes from you. Thank you, Ashisha, and we really hope that we'll host you again, because we have got a number of questions lined up for you. And thank you for taking out your time. It was a privilege for us to have you here.
I would love, coming again, and it was a wonderful idea. And you know, this is a great thing. I will subscribe, and I will ask my friends also to go to this channel, walk out what this is about. This is a very helpful piece that you guys are doing. You are doing a very good job. Thank you for having me as a part of this session, and I would love to come again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashisha, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.